This is Brian. Yes, sir. Happy to. This is Brian Yates with Schwartz, Page and Harding. Welcome to the Montgomery County MUD number 39 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, February the 17th, 2021. I hope everybody's doing all right with everything that we're experiencing right now with the weather conditions. Do need to briefly go through the meeting procedures with the board before we begin today's meeting. So as in prior meetings, I do need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your lines. Next, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye or an abstention. Finally, we need to perform a roll call for each person who's present in the meeting today. I'll start with the roll call for the board of directors, and then we'll ask for consultants and staff to identify themselves, followed by members of the public. So we'll start with our board of directors, and I'm having trouble with my internet connection right now. Let's see, Eric Berglund. Present. Ronnie Rogers.
Present.
Jim Matthews.
Present.
Eric Hode. Absent. Okay, we do have a quorum. We'll move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Barney Dubois.
Present.
Jeannie Scott.
Here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting? If not, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelling. Present. Chris Meeks.
Present.
Matt Corley. Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting?
Matt Vaughn is on the phone.
If not, we'll move on to MUD 39 consultants. Do we have any MUD 39 consultants in the meeting? We'll do, and Prospective Director Ted Stanley on the line.
I am here.
Okay, very good. Okay, roll call. Hand it over to Jim Stinson to begin the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. We'll call the meeting to order and go on to item number 2, receive comments from the public. I don't think we have any public here today, so we'll go on to item 3, consider an act on request for adjustments. Jeannie and Mike, do you all have any adjustments?
Jeannie and I don't have any.
And this is Mike. I have none either.
Very good. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which is items 4 through 9. Would any director like to remove any of those items from the consent agenda and move those to the regular agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which would be items 4 through 9.
Mr. Director
So
Matthews,
moved.
I make a motion that we approve those items.
Okay, we have
Director
a motion-
Berglund. Director Berglund, I second.
a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call. Eric Berglund, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ronnie Rogers, how do you vote?
Aye.
Tim Matthews?
Aye.
And I guess Brian Ted is not officially seated yet, so that motion passed. Moving
Brian,
on
that's
to
correct.
item number 10 is consider an act on appointment of Director Stanley. So Brian, do you want to help me through that?
This is Brian, happy to. So, Ted, we do have to go through a process for seating you as a director on the board. I believe you did receive all of your director appointment documents. We do have some direction from the Secretary of State's office for how to seat directors while we're in this remote meeting environment. Their direction is that we first confirm with the director or the person to be seated as a new director that they have completed their statement of appointed officer, as well as the affidavit of current director, that both those documents have been signed by you. Can you confirm that for the record and state your name for the record, please?
Yes, this is Ted Stanley. To my knowledge, those forms have been signed and submitted to the Water District.
Okay, very good. This is Brian. So now that we have that out of the way, I can go ahead and perform the oath of office. I'll state the oath, and at the end, if you agree, state I do or I will, and your name for the record again. Do you, Ted Stanley, solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director of Montgomery County MUD number 39 of the state of Texas, and will to the best of your ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help you God?
I do, Ted Stanley.
All right, very good. Well, congratulations, Ted. Welcome aboard. You're officially seated as a new director on the district. After we take action on the item to accept your qualification statement, bond, oath of office, affidavit of current director, and election not to disclose, do we have a motion from the board to accept those documents? And then Ted will be able to participate in the remainder of the meeting after this motion.
This is
Eric
Director
Berglund, so
Matthews. I
moved.
make a motion that we approve all of those items for Ted. And welcome aboard.
Director Berglund, I'll second that motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Jim, a second by Eric. Any further discussion on the item? If not, I guess we'll call the vote. Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Motion carries. You are officially seated, Ted.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
We'll move
Welcome
on to
aboard.
the remain. Sorry, go ahead.
I just said congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Amen.
So we do have a couple of sub items under 10B through F. B is to elect officers to the board. Let's see here. We have president, vice president, secretary, and assistant secretary. So we do try to have 2 assistant secretaries to make sure that we have someone available to sign documents in the event that our secretary and assistant secretary are not available. Do we have a motion to appoint Ted as an additional assistant secretary treasurer of the board?
Before we do that, gentlemen, let me just say, and I may should have said this earlier, as a financial advisor, everything that I do outside of my line of business has to be reported to my broker dealer. So if I hold any office or any position that has anything to do with money, I need to report that to LPL and submit statements and so forth. So I'm more than happy to serve as an assistant secretary in any other capacity that you may need me to, but I think it would be better to not serve as treasurer, only so I don't have to go through all the extra reporting and put that burden on MUD 39. I just don't want to do that.
This is Brian. That's a good point, Ted. And I think, we can go ahead and we have some districts that don't have a second assistant secretary treasurer. That's just the name of that position. So we can just go ahead and leave you as a director at this point and not have any action to have you as a assistant secretary treasurer.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, item C, approval of an amended district registration form. We do have to update that form with the TCEQ that reflects who all of the district's directors are, what their term of office is, as well as your staff and consultants. Since we now have a new director, Ted, on the board, we do need to reflect that on the district registration form and to submit that to the TCEQ within 30 days. I'll take care of that filing on the district's behalf with your authorization. Do we have a motion to approve that amended district registration form?
Director Matthews, I make a motion that we approve that form.
Thank you. Yeah, I second that motion.
Okay,
Eric Bergen.
and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the vote on that. Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
Motion carried. And our last sub-action item here is to authorize preparation and maintenance of a local government officers list in connection with conflict of interest disclosure requirements. The district is required to maintain a list of all of its local government officers, which includes the board of directors as well as your investment officer. That way, vendors can look at that list to determine whether or not they have a potential conflict of interest as it relates to any of those local government officers, and can file the required conflicts disclosure form for the district. Since we now have Ted as a director, we need to take action to update that list of local government officers. That does not get submitted to any other regulatory agency or entity. It's just maintained in the district's records. It's to be provided upon receipt to vendors. Do we have a motion to authorize the preparation and maintenance of the updated local government officers list to reflect Ted Stanley as director of the district?
Director Matthews, I move that we give Brian authority to prepare that statement.
And Director Berglund, I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Jim, a second by Eric. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call the vote. Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item E and F are just informational. So training requirements. Ted, you'll see that you have a memo there about Open Meetings Act and Public Information Act. I know you've had a lot of public service in the past, so you may have already gone through that process before, but if you could complete those 2 one-hour training requirements on the Attorney General's website and provide a copy of the certificate of completion that you get after you complete each of those training courses to Shelley, and she'll put that in your director file to evidence compliance. It's a one-time requirement. You don't have to do that each year. You just do it when you first join the board as a director.
Okay, I'll take care of it.
And F, conflicts disclosure statement reporting requirements memorandum. That memo was in your packet of documents. Ted, if you have any questions or need to discuss potential conflict matters, feel free to give me a call, and I'll be happy to visit with you about any issues that you may have.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is Brian. That completes everything under item number 10. I think we can go ahead. I'll hand it back over to Jim to move on to the next item.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 11. And pardon me if I'm up and down and answering the phone. It's kind of nuts here. You can imagine with what's going on with the weather in the community. So we're going to do what we can to plow through your meeting. But item number 11 is receive information and review of the 6th and final grant accounting from SJRA.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Chris Meeks. The presentation I'm going to go through, I do not have internet connection, so I'm going to refer to your packet. It begins on page 25. I'm going to run through this, but if you have any questions, please let me know. This is a recap of the 6th and final accounting that was originally done in 2017, approved everything by the MUDs at that point. I am going to take the technical data report that we have and send that to Jim at some point this week. And so if you'd like to see that full report, please reach out to Jim and he can forward it to you. But starting on page 25, actually, I'm going to move to page 26. The history of the interim accounting, basically, this is a process that's been conducted since 1983 to fund expansions of the water and wastewater systems. These expansions were based off the fact that the Woodlands was growing And so rather than all the infrastructure funding being required by one MUD, the MUDs came together and collectively, all of the MUDs paid for the expansions across the woodlands going forward. The interim accountings were generally 5-year periods. So we were looking ahead 5 years, working with the MUDs, WJPA at the time, and the developers and saying, what's going to be where, how big is it, what are you guys going to need? And then based off of that, we would standardize the development to a single family dwelling unit equivalent. What that means is we would take the water and sewer demands across the woodlands and the size of the facilities. So if a restaurant's 10,000 square foot and you look at the mall, which the mall's as big as it is, we would standardize all that to a 2,000 square foot home. And so if you own a home in the woodlands and it's 2,000 square foot, it's considered one water SFDUE, one wastewater SFDUE. If you look at the mall and it's 10,000 square foot, around numbers, it'd be 5 SFDUEs water, 5 SFDUEs wastewater. And so when we're talking SFDUEs, if I say the mall's 5 SFDUEs, each SFDUE on the water side is 430 gallons per day of potable water. On the wastewater side, one SFDUE is 217 gallons per day of wastewater service. So I'll move to the next page. The title is Considerations, Impacts Reviewed. These are just the 3 key items that we looked at. Any regulatory requirements that were going to be coming up, phosphorus removal, change in disinfection practices, whatever it may be, we'd incorporate that into the interim accountings. We'd also look at customer demands, water and wastewater side. Then, of course, the key as well being projected development. And we'd put all those together. And then from that data, we'd be working with the MUDs and JPA and the developer to determine the path forward. So that brings us to the purpose of the 6th and final accounting and the path forward back in 2017. So when the 6th and final accounting was done, it was for the time frame of 2017 through 2027. 2027 was chosen because that's when the Howard Hughes Corporation said ultimate development of the woodlands would occur, as far as I could tell. At that point, it was 10 years out. So on this page with the little road that kind of goes down it, I'm going to focus on the bottom 2 billboards. The 3 at the top is items that we've recapped in the previous 2 slides. So the path forward with the 6th and final accounting, rather than doing the every 5 years, look at the 5-year look ahead, so on and so forth, when the developer said 2027 is ultimate development, then we said, okay, this is going to be the final interim accounting because there's not going to be any of these large, grand expansions of wastewater facilities, water facilities, so on and so forth. So Woodlands Water reviews the growth in the woodlands and land use and compares it to what was planned in the 6th and final. And they provide that report to the River Authority by the 1st of every year. If there's any additional capacity needs going forward for any MUD, those capacity needs are handled by that individual MUD. So rather than all the MUDs coming together.
I got this for Mama Juanita.
Oh, you got the book, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I've got,
Hey, Matt.
I'm taking orders.
So rather than all of the MUDs coming together to fund capacity, each individual MUD will be required to fund the capacity needed for the expansion development in their MUD. Any questions so far? All right. Next page, items for consideration. This is kind of just why the recap is occurring. Capacity is built and funded only for the potential growth identified in the 6th and final accounting. Excuse me. We do not have a reserve capacity, especially on the wastewater side, where there's another 1 million gallons a day that if a MUD needs to expand, that we could just dip into that reserve capacity. This capacity is also related to water lines, sewer lines, pumps, motors, valves, all that good stuff. So all available capacity has been sold. And of course, as we talked about, any additional capacity needs may trigger capital improvements that need to be funded solely by the MUD. And one thing to keep an eye on is redevelopment, multifamily and vertical development, as you see around the Woodlands occurring. So on the last page, the Six Inferno accounting projected demands and SFDUEs per MUD. This is just a table that is in the Six Inferno that just shows each of the MUDs what their water SFDUE is and what their wastewater SFDUE is. So if you take the SFDUE for water, multiply it by 430, you'll get the water demand. If you take the wastewater, multiply it by 217, you get the wastewater gallons per day. It's a quick run through, but it was a very important process since the 80s till 2017. With all the MUDs coming together and going forward, it's still something that the MUDs need to pay attention to in case there's redevelopment in their area. But do you have any questions of me? All right. Well, thank you. Jim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are we on item number 12 now? Receive information regarding consolidation of wastewater services.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chris.
This is Chris Meeks again. You got it. All right. So in your packet, I believe on page 32 or 33 is the presentation. Prior to giving the presentation, I wanted to provide a high-level summary. Can I tell you what this is about? If you want the presentation, I can give it, or if you're good with the summary, we can leave it at that. Basically, what we're looking at is over the next 20 to 40 years, wastewater plant 1 and wastewater plant 2 are going to need to be rebuilt. This is based off the fact of their service life. Wastewater plant 1's just about 50 years old. Concrete and the sewer gas environment doesn't last much longer than 50 years. So plant 1 over the next 20 years, we're looking at roughly 4 phases of rebuilding, 5 years apiece. Rough numbers, it's in the actual report or in the presentation, but you're looking at $200 to $300 million to rebuild plant 1. In 2045, wastewater plant 2 will be about 50 years old. So we'll be looking to do the same thing at wastewater plant 2, rebuild plant 2. Over a 20-year period, 4 phases, 5 years apiece. All these numbers that I'm telling you include a 3% inflation. And so wastewater plant 2, we're looking at roughly 200 to 350 million to rebuild wastewater plant 2. When we were talking about this with the audit committee, we brought up the idea of consolidation. One idea is to demolish wastewater plant 1 and just expand wastewater plant 2 by the same capacity plant 1 was. The other option would be to go to wastewater plant 2, demolish plant 2, demolish plant 1, and build a brand new facility at the same capacity as those 2 facilities. With that number, depending where you're going, you're looking at 200, 300, 400 million as well. So what the River Authority has asked is if the MUDs are interested in doing a request for qualifications for a consolidation feasibility study, which will be a high-level look, a little bit more detailed than what you have in your packet, fine-tune the numbers, but we're not looking at technologies, we're not looking at a lot of the finer details. But this study would be paid for by the bond funds that are already included in the rate, the debt service it is. So there's no rate increase. It's already in the wholesale River Authority rate. Estimated cost, depending on the options, $500,000 to $1 million, $500,000 to $1 million, and about 12 months. Right now, we have the feasibility study after talking to the trustees and the audit committee. What we're looking at is, one, the feasibility study will look at a baseline option. What's the cost to continue the plan like we're doing now over the next 40 years? What are 3 options to consolidate the wastewater plants? And then what are 2 options to transfer the flow from wastewater plant 1 to wastewater plant 2? So we've met with the audit committee multiple times over multiple months. We brought it to the trustees in November. We want to bring it to the MUD so y'all can take it, review it, ask any questions you may have. And then we want to take this proposal back to the trustees, hopefully in March, so they can vote on the RFQ, request for qualifications, going out. And then once the RFQ and all the documents come back, we negotiate a scope and a contract with the contractor or the consultant. We'd bring that back to the trustees with the final number, final chance to approve before we take it to our board. It's a lot of information, but if you'd like me to go through the packet, the presentation, I definitely can. But if you have any questions, I can answer those as well.
This is something that our audit committee and staff, SGRA staff and Woodlands Water staff have been struggling with for several months. We hope that it'll be on the agenda for the trustee meeting in March to make a decision to whether we go forward with the $500,000 to $1 million feasibility study. So if you have any strong feelings about that one way or other, let your Woodlands Water trustee know. Thank you. Item number 13, the attorney's report.
This is Brian. Not much to report today. The legislature is still moving very slowly at the beginning of the session due to COVID and security concerns and now weather issues. So not much to report on that front. Also, as Jim has reported recently, we are looking at the content developer reimbursement agreement policy to see if there are any necessary updates that need to be made to that policy since it is a bit old now. We'll be reporting on any recommended changes to that in the coming months. That's all I have to report under the attorney's report. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Okay, if there are none, moving on to the general manager's report, a couple items to summarize from the trustee meeting. MUD 60 director and trustee Bob Lux has been serving as the Woodlands Water Agency representative to the Texas Water Conservation Association for a couple of years or more now. And he was recently reappointed to that board and also asked to serve to continue to serve on the utility district panel. And Bob has the support of the trustees and certainly my support. I think his involvement in this organization has really been helpful, and it's been helpful for me to have somebody attend the meetings and kind of take the workload off of me. So he continues to get our support in that position. The Houston Advanced Research Center recently completed their initial review of the Lone Star Groundwater District subsidence study. We sent out a press release from them regarding that review with an executive summary. So please take a look at that and let us know if we have questions or we can answer questions on that document. I reported that I have been dealing with two neighborhoods where the poles were constructed to help transmit the signals for our AMI water meter upgrade, large 70-foot plus aluminum poles, and two neighborhoods, the residents have a concern about these poles may impact their home value and their view to the area, around the area. So I've been meeting with them, looking at options that could be implemented to address those concerns. I'll be bringing that information back to the MUDs and the trustees in March or April to go over. I have also reported that I received an email from the general manager of the Lone Star Groundwater District on Friday requesting to meet with a couple of our trustees, with a couple of their board members. So anyway, we'll see how that works out. Eric's not on the line today, but I'll be visiting with him later on this week to talk about that. And Trustee Martin informed the Woodlands Water Agency that his preliminary numbers indicate that we'll be providing a refund at the March meeting to the MUDs in accordance with our resolution adopted for refunding certain levels of reserves that occur in the Woodlands Water Agency budget after our audit is done each year. If we exceed a certain threshold, we do some refunding back to the MUDs, and he thinks that will happen in March. So that concludes my report, and I am available for questions. And if there are none, I will move on to item number 15, the Woodlands Water Trustees Report. The summary is in your packet. I covered most of the information. If there's anything in the summary that you want me to discuss, I'm happy to do that. Anybody have anything from the summary? And if not, item number 16, authorizing development agreements. We don't have anything today, so we'll move on to item 17, discuss matters for placement on a future agenda. Anybody have an item they want for a future agenda? If not, we'll go on to item 18 and adjourn the meeting at 12:32. Went by quick today. I appreciate everybody's tuning in, even though the weather conditions are hazardous and difficult. I appreciate your participation today.
Stay warm, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you all
Jim.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Hi, Jim.